A Different World by Michelle Stimson. You ever heard the saying that sometimes the worst thing to happen to you could also be the best thing? Well, it's true. It happened to me. 2 years ago on Christmas Day, my grandmother, Big, died. She was more like my mother than my grandmother. She got legal custody of me when I was 2 and raised me until she passed away when I was 16. Big was my heart, and a lot of people said she and I were just alike, serious and quiet. I can't say I was surprised when she died, though. The doctors told her a long time ago to stop smoking cigarettes, and she didn't listen. You've got to die of something, Big would cough. Might as well be something you like. Big's house had been a place where everyone in the family knew they could come and stay if things got bad. My Aunt Renee moved back every time she broke up with whomever she was been living with. Seemed like every time she came back, she brought another child with her. Renee had 4 kids by the time Big died. Every couple of years, my mother would get evicted. Then she'd come and live with Big, but my mother never stayed for more than a few months because she and Big didn't get along too well. They argued like cats and dogs, mostly about me. I figured it was wrong to wish my mother would leave, but I couldn't help it. My mother drank and got high. She got sticky fingers. She stole all the money I'd collected from my school's cookie dough fundraiser when I was in the 7th grade. Big had kicked my mother out again and told her not to come back, but Big didn't mean it. Everyone knew Big's heart. My mother needed a place to stay that following year. Big let her move back in. The cycle continued. My uncle Le'Veon stayed at Big's house when he wasn't in jail. Every time he got out, he'd move back into my bedroom with his girlfriend, Tawanda, so I'd have to sleep on the couch in the front room. I hated sleeping in the front room because the only thing standing between me and all the chaos in my neighborhood was the rickety wooden door on Big's 60-year-old house. One time, somebody broke into the house and I had to pretend I was asleep while the thief took the television off the coffee table less than a foot away from my face. I think the perpetrator knew I was awake, but he must have decided not to bother me so long I didn't bother him. Anyway, just so happened that when Big died, Uncle Le'Veon was out of jail. He and Tijuana started making plans for Big's funeral. Suddenly, Big's house was filled with family members and a few people from church Big visited every Easter. In the midst of planning for the funeral, Uncle Le'Veon said he was calling Uncle Raymond to help pay for Big's final expenses. I really didn't think that was a good idea. I'd only seen Uncle Raymond 3 times, but I'd heard his name all my life. Big and said Raymond was her shining star since he was the only one of 4 kids who graduated from both high school and college, but everyone else seemed to think Uncle Raymond was whack. Uncle Le'Veon said Raymond was a nerd. Aunt Renee said Raymond always thought she was better than everyone else. Back when I was elementary school, we got an invitation to Uncle Raymond's wedding. My mother ripped it to pieces. She fussed. Raymond's always looked down on the rest of the family. I wonder if his prissy little wife knows he grew up right here in Brooks Park. At that moment, I'd gotten the bright idea to ask my mother why she never married my father. She had laughed. Samaya, you better take your nose out of all those books I see you reading. If you get married, you'll lose your housing forever. I bet they don't show you all that in those fairy tales, huh? Paragraph 14. My Uncle Raymond, his wife Gracie, and their 8-year-old daughter Kendra stayed in a hotel when they got to town for the funeral. I should have known they would think they were too good to stay in Brooks Park. At the funeral, Uncle Raymond hardly even cried. His wife Gracie cried more than him. When we all went to the back of the church for the repast, I had to sit across from Uncle Raymond and Gracie because the organizers wanted all the family to sit together. How are you doing in school, Samaya? Uncle Raymond asked. His deep voice sounded like a radio announcer, and his bald head reminded me of my principal. He looked like he had the kind of job where he was always dueling out consequences. I kept my eyes on my plate. Good. What are your plans after graduation? Gracie asked. Since she had actually cried at Big's funeral, I decided to look at Gracie in the eyes when I answered, I don't know, Aunt Gracie. Probably get a job. She smiled and continued, just call me Gracie. Where do you think you might work? I don't know, probably a restaurant or something. Work my way up. Uncle Raymond interrupted with, I hear you like to read. I instinctively Instinctively, my eyes locked on his. Who said that? How dare he act like he knew everything about me? Don't shoot me, he laughed. Big told me that you enjoyed reading. She said your library card looked like it had been in World War III. I used to like reading. They closed the Brooks Park Library branch. I burst his bubble. And you let that stop you from reading, he fussed? What about your school's library? The books at my school is from about 1985. Uncle Raymond shook his head. That's ridiculous, but you should never let other people stop you from getting what you want in life. I barked. It ain't my fault. They don't have good books in the library. We're in Brooks Park, remember? Gracie gently laid her hand on Uncle Raymond's wrist. Samaya, if you'd like to start reading again, I'd love to help. My heart thumped hard in my chest. How? I can get you a bookstore gift card and you can order online, she suggested. I ain't got no computer. I checked her. Uncle Raymond asked, don't they have them at your school? Yeah, I guess, but I don't have a way to get to the store to pick up the books. Gracie smiled again. Don't worry, they'll deliver the books to you. Uncle Raymond shook his head. That's not going to work. Why not? I snapped at him. Calmly, he replied. If a huge brown truck pulls up to Big's house and drops off a package at the doorstep while you're at school, what are the chances that package will still be sitting there by the time you get home? He had a point. I sank into my chair and muttered, 0. I know, Brooks Park, he said. There goes the plan, I sighed. Don't give up so easily, my young niece, he started again with the radio voice. Let's think of plan B. You want the books, but you don't want them delivered to Big's house. What else can you do? I shrugged. I don't know. He shook his head again. Aink. Wrong answer. Think. What can you do to get those books despite the fact that you live in Brooks Park? I guess have them sent somewhere else. Where? He probed, squinting his eyes. I peered back at him. To someone who doesn't live in Brooks Park? Do you know anyone who doesn't live in Brooks Park? Uncle Raymond quizzed. No. What about your teachers? Gracie asked. I had to look at her like she was crazy. I don't know my teachers like that. Uncle Raymond chuckled. I'll bet your English teacher would love to help. The next week, I told Mr. Colbert about my situation and asked if he would be willing to have the books delivered to him and then bring them to me at school. You'd have thought I've offered him a kidney. Samaya, that would be wonderful, he gushed. When I got home from school, I asked Uncle Le'Veon if I could use his cell phone to call Uncle Raymond. He sat on his bed with bloodshot eyes, looking half drunk, while Tawanda lay motionless behind him, her matted mass of black and blonde hair covering the side of her face entirely. The dark room reeked of marijuana. My first thought was that I had to tell my Big about this. She smoked cigarettes, but she didn't allow marijuana in her home. Then I remembered Big was dead. What you need to call Raymond for? Uncle Le'Veon questioned me. Gracie's going to give me some money to order books online. Uncle Le'Veon's ears must have heard music. Raymond and Gracie are giving you money? They're not giving me money. They're just helping me buy books. I don't see why they're helping you pay for books when they can't help save Big's house. His words hit me hard in the stomach. What? I managed to stammer. Uncle Le'Veon continued. Big got some kind of reverse mortgage on this house to where after the homeowner is dead, the mortgage company can sell the house unless I come up with some money fast. Though her body didn't move, Tawana suddenly yelled, What you sitting here for then? Get out there and hustle. Paragraph 69. And hustle Uncle Le'Veon did, except he didn't hustle out there. He started hustling from Big's house all day and all night. Different people came in and out of the house, or sometimes they just blew a horn and Uncle Le'Veon or Tawanda went out to their car and to make a drug transaction. I moved into Big's old bedroom and locked myself inside most of the time with my wonderful, glorious books, thanks to Gracie and Uncle Raymond. A few weeks after Big died, Aunt Renee moved back in with her kids, which brought lots of babysitting into my life. Plus, I had to move out of Big's room. The front room was no longer an option for sleeping at night, which only left the kitchen or the bathroom for me. I opted to retire to the bathroom at night since it had a lock that I could put between me and Uncle Le'Veon's customers. With 3 adults and 5 minors, including myself, the bathroom seemed the busiest place in the house, next to the front room, of course. Several times throughout the night, I have to get up to let someone use the restroom. Nights like this, I cried myself to sleep because there was no way on earth Big would have made me bunk on a bathroom floor so Uncle Le'Veon could disrespect her home by turning it into a crack house. If Big could see this, she would hop out of her grave and slap him silly because Big didn't allow illegal activity in her house. You might live around crime, she said, but crime doesn't have to live in you. Even when Aunt Renee moved out again, tears visited me almost every night. If I hadn't been for my friend Alexis, I'd probably have been failing out of school. Alexis and I had a lot of the same classes together, so when we got on the bus after school, we'd sit next to each other and rush through our homework during our 25-minute stop and go journey. What you get for number 5, she asked. B is greater than 53. Alexis wrinkled her nose. I got 27. I flipped the back of the book and checked my answer. 53. I should have known. You always have the right answer when the teachers ask questions. You're so smart. She heartily erased her markings. How did you come up with 53? After I walked Alexis through my steps, she found her error and made the correction on her paper. We finished the math and then started on social studies. As we entered Brooks Park and the bus driver began making stops, Alexis and I packed our books. We'll have to finish this in the morning, I said. The bus driver stopped at my corner, and suddenly the bus filled with oohs and ahs. Somebody got busted, one of the boys on the bus yelled. I glanced down the street and realized that the law enforcement hoopla centered on Big's house. 4 police cruisers, a big tank truck, and an ambulance littered the lawn. The normal slew of students got off at my corner, but my behind was frozen in place. Young lady, the bus driver accosted me while looking through his rectangular mirror. You getting off? I shook my head. No. Quickly, I begged Alexis. Can I go to your house? Yeah, Alexis didn't ask any questions. She just turned on the television when we got to her house. I guess the look on my face said I didn't feel much like talking. When Alexis's mom got home from work, she asked in a roundabout way when I'd be leaving. She has to wait for her uncle to come back because she doesn't have a key, Alexis covered for me. By 7:30, it was probably safe to go back home. However, thanks to the end of daylight saving time, the sky was completely dark. You can't walk through Brooks Park by yourself at night, Alexis whispered, especially not if you plan on taking the shortcut through Berry Hill. Does it look like I got a choice? Guess not. It was bad enough I had to walk through Brooks Park and Berry Hill apartments, made my situation 10 times worse. Every time the apartment owners tried to eliminate the dark corners of the complex, people shot out the light bulbs. I grabbed my backpack and took my most valuable possession, a $5 bill, out of the side compartment. I stuffed the money inside my sock in case somebody jacked me on the way home. Don't forget your earrings, Alexis warned. They fake. All right, guys, I am going to pause here and I will continue reading in this part 2 video.